Okay, this looks different than it used to be, considering this is now thicker than it used to be, and even the character shapes are different as well, because they're a lot more curvy. And the debug panel is definitely a lot smaller than it used to be, with more test data and these odd cutouts, mainly meant so I can see what's behind. And, of course, I want you to note this one thing right here. Frame rate. Almost 500. Now, why is that so high? That's the magic of SDL. Yes, that's right, SDL. 5 times of trying, and I finally get it. You're seeing this rendered through SDL. One thing I want you to note, yeah, there's both cop cars going by there, is this total image memory. This has gone down significantly. Compare it to my previous videos and you'll see what I mean. Of course, all the movement and stuff hasn't really changed. Yeah, I'm really speeding there. Nothing to worry about. Of course, I gotta watch other platforms so I don't run into them. But that's nothing really significant that I'm after, or what the point of all this is. But I want to show you some of the other things that I've done too. And there's quite a few of them. Yep, over 500 frames per second. And as I go through my test level and stuff, grabbing these jewels and stuff, which aren't any different, these hearts aren't any different. But one thing that I need to do is this, the water. No, there's not going to be any water in Jeremy's house. You don't see that until Lake Cavern. But what I need to do is I need to update the texture, because this looks odd and this isn't. I'm not bothering to do this part. So I need to update that texture, and when I do, well, that's a different subject. But that's one of my focus points anyway. So I'm going to run through this course again, following along here, going by, and up I go. Yeah, I know I need to change that so that this text that's supposed to be here is actually black instead of white, which is a relatively minor issue. But these vanishing platforms, you're probably very familiar with these things, right? Okay, it faded away. Didn't do that before, it just kept blinking. Well, here's an idea on what's actually going on. Frame advance, you can see that it's blinking, and now it's starting to fade away, and you can start seeing the stuff behind it, as you can tell here very well. Isn't frame advance so useful? And it pops right back into existence. That's just one of the major advantages of SDL. Color multiplication has drastically simplified the drawing of the platform, so I don't have to draw 4 times just to get replicate pretty much any color I want. So, because I only have to have one draw now, I can actually provide this fading. Notice that that one faded a lot faster. So, I guess for the next thing, I need to take my shortcut here. Barely dodged that. The yellow spring, that is, I barely dodged. Going up, following my test level. So what else is going on? Waiting for that to come down. Yes, I love you. Okay, that's different. I don't remember that being there. Interesting. Of course, I'm going to use this instead of that platform there, the moving one. But what does that green spring lead to? I don't remember this being here. Surely it ended right here. Okay, well, let's go see. Introducing sloped platforms. For the first time ever, Platform Masters now has sloped platforms actually being drawn, and it's thanks to SDL drastically simplifying that. There are 16 different possible slopes. This is a floor platform, typical of floors because they're perfectly flat and level. Wall platforms are perfectly vertical, and everything else is a slope in between. Here's your 1-8, 1-4, 3-8, 1-2, 3-4, 1-1, and of course, off over here, you saw the 2-1 slopes. Not only do the slopes go down, like these ones here do, they also go up. Just to give you an idea on what they look like when they get connected, that's this right here. Or at least that's just a basic example to kind of give you the idea. And one thing, look around frequently, you never know what you're going to find. Now, I wonder, how do I get that 2 up? See that gap right there? That's the key. Of course, there's another method, but that's a different subject. So what other advantages are there in SDL? Quite a lovely view up there, isn't it? I'll walk you through the other worlds, and yeah, my menus sure look a lot different too. After all, where's those icons at? There's no icons here anymore. What happened? Originally, they were integrated in with a font, so I can just simply %C them in, but with the color multiplication affecting the text, I, well, made another optimization that's only available with SDL. But that color multiplication meant you no longer got the actual colors of the icons that were here, so they're, well, pretty much gone at the moment. I will be adding them back in, and I'm thinking of doing it right on this side over here. It's unconfirmed, however. But as you can tell here, why is that so low? Well, that's actually because of the loading from the world, but yep, there it is, 500, just barely poking at it. Uranus essentially hasn't really changed. Of course, this lower part here is a little different because the grasses and the terrain itself has also been updated, so it's using significantly less memory than what it was doing before. Other than that, there's really nothing else going on. All those air taxis. Ronisa Plains used to have some really bad frame rates in Windows 7 when I had GDI. Well, what do you know? 400 frames per second. Of course, it's wildly fluctuating like crazy because of this pulsing that I got going on. I have no idea what's causing it. It's a mystery. It's been ongoing for a very long time. But that aside, another modification I made is, hey, what do you know? That extra tall grass I had earlier is back. And of course, as you can see here, the grass isn't all the same height. Some areas really bury the character, where you can't really see him too well. In other areas, well, you kind of get the basic idea, right? Can't really hide the character in it too well, considering you can still see him, but if you look closely enough. But it gives you the basic idea. Yep, that's just some of the major changes I made to this particular world. Okay, what's with that odd black out there? That's because I need to completely overhaul this world as far as the texture designs and stuff go. Yeah, I love that wagon wheel effect. That's my favorite. So once I get this world completely overhauled, that black will be pretty much gone. Yep, wagon wheel effect again. Okay, that was interesting. Cavern Desert isn't really anything different than what it used to be. Of course, you got the same usual optimizations to the terrain, and obviously you don't want to be touching those cacti, except the fact they're in the background because they're moving slower than what else is in the foreground. But that aside, that's really about the only thing that really needs to be dealt with. One thing I big time need to do is enhance the cars, because there's no lighting and stuff like that on them. It's inconsistent. And another thing I'd like to do is making these 25% taller so I can get rid of this excessive gap there. Other than that, it's good. Lake Cavern doesn't have any change, basically, although I did patch this up right there because I could see the undersides of these. But one thing that I would like to do, which will affect any world that has water in the foreground like this, is notice how the whole scene darkened even up here instead of just where it otherwise was. Well, that's because I want to put in a gradient here where that actually happens as is, instead of just darkening the whole screen accordingly. Or at least that's what part of my plan is. Of course, I don't have functionality for water at the moment, but you can see just how dark it gets. It's not really very dark, but you still get the basic idea. Cavern Forest is pretty much unchanged, aside from the fact that, well, I'm kind of still waiting for the trees. I got somebody working on it, or at least somebody new, but he's gone silent again. So, that's basically how this is going. Air taxi is what I used to try to get an Earth curvature effect on here, but it didn't come out right because I really was just not satisfied with it. Of course, if you really want to see some levels, what they actually might be like, I do have some samples that are provided in this particular world as background scenery. Of course, it does take a while for me to get over to it. Right there, you can see one of the platform levels. Of course, let's see, that's the start platform. Here's the goal platform. You can see the various slopes and stuff here too. They do need to be updated because they don't really conform to my standards anymore. What am I doing? I'm just trying to speed up so I could show you this one. Yep, this is a much closer view of what the levels look like. This is still only in the background. If you look closely, you can see parts of the platforms underwater. But start platform, you could take this route up here, grab all the goodies, or you can just take the more direct route, use a spring. Path splits in two, so you can take the lower route, braving a spike pit underwater while you're at it, and return over here, or you can make a skill jump, go over to here, brave the spikes, watching over them, grab the one up, and return. Follow the route down, and pretty much from there, just follow the course, and you'll get to the goal. Or, much quicker, jump off of here, go down there, climb down this ladder, up here, jump up this, which requires higher than normal jumping, follow this little bit, and on to the goal you are. So much quicker, and an absolute must for difficulty, can you guess? 8, the highest. Of course, that water's very dangerous. Because, well, fall off, and there's really nothing else for you to get to. You simply just can't get back. And with the constant motion, well, that's a different subject. Beautiful Berrugan Reef, thanks to that beautiful dusk sky. Of course, don't forget your submarine and the bottomless pit. So, what else have I done with SDL anyway, you're probably wondering. Well, note how this is all one same color all the way through. And why bother loading a 1024 by 384 image and drawing that when I can just simply use SDL's rectangular fills and actually just simply fill that in, drastically reducing memory usage. And when I mean drastically, I'm not joking. It's a very significant reduction in memory usage. Even this, from this point on the island out in the distance, which is the solid ground layers, why bother having to load so many of those when I can just simply use rectangular fills? Yeah, 1,000 mile an hour, big time super splash. If once I get that added in, that is. I did attempt to get ground decals for this. It worked out fairly okay, but it just wasn't worth all the extra draws and stuff needed for that. And the extra complexity. Beautiful Carnivalesta. Everyone's favorite world, isn't it? Well, there's the only change I'm thinking of is making these darker, but only when low. Other than that, let's see here. Now, you remember how things darken when you get up, right? Why is the character darker now? I wasn't doing that before. Thanks to the magic of SDL and color multiplication, yep, I can darken him without having to bother with updating his image and stuff, which I do have somebody working on. You're probably thinking, you can hardly see where you're going up here because it's so dark. Well, there's something called a fire that will be included in these particular dark environments, and later, of course, as a hazard. They will light up any dark areas. Just to give you the basic idea here. And yes, I mean to miss these, because I'm after using this to really crank up the altimeter. This is where Carnivalesta really shows its real glory. Cassiopeia out there, and you can see the sky glow dome from Hersiak, which is right in there. Yes, Hersiak, that city that's off in the background. But the higher you go, the more stars become visible. One of the unique features of Platform Masters, and an interesting one at that. A very pretty view, isn't it? The Sentis Mountains, well, the biggest change with this one is the grass. Okay, so what's so different about grass? That's nothing new. But it looks shorter. It looks so much shorter, actually. Considering, well, let me get over to a different area. Okay. It seems to be transitioning much smoother than it used to be. Here it's really narrow, and there it's a little taller. It's because it's based on elevation and slope, because here there's nothing. But that just gives you the basic idea. Man, do I just love how smooth everything is. Speaking of smooth, that's what vsync is all about. For the first time ever, Platform Masters gets vsync. Yep, I just love how smooth everything is. It's almost to the point of ridiculous, but man, I love how smooth all those trees are. Of course, occasional jittering because there are fractions being involved. So it's actually moving 5 pixels on occasion instead of 4, just for example. But yeah, you get the basic idea, at least from that. The terrain itself hasn't changed, and this world does need a complete major overhaul. I've covered this in previous videos. So, other than that, that's really about it. Yeah, I missed everything. Wonder how that happened. Just bad timing. Sentis Caverns has plenty of detail and stuff like that. You're probably very familiar with it. But you probably remember that pink and yellow in here, right? Well, that's what you get for having gradients and the like that are really pushing the limits of, well, 8-bit precision, basically. And yeah, you don't want to be going 300 miles an hour through a cave, because you never know what you're going to run into. There's a wall right in the way almost all the time. In a real cave, that is. Mount Centusia is really nothing any different here. Lava's just as detailed as it was before, and stuff like that. Yep, nothing new here, and the enhancements I made to this are covered as well. Yep, there's that familiar pretty scene. Musen Taiga, which I'm kind of thinking of repronouncing from Musen, is, well, also unchanged. And yeah, this looks a little odd. It used to be a dark green, but now it's not. Well, that's because I need to completely do this world from the nothing that it has. Whoa, what was that? That don't look right. So what's going on there? Well, I'll explain that in a bit, but I need to make some progress here. Okay, what did I just hit? There's nothing there. What's going on? Well, I'll explain that in pretty much toward the end of the video, as I'm climbing up here to get to about what the maximum possible height is that you might see in a normal, regular level in this particular world. Activate bounce and whoa, really put on those brakes. Yeah, there's nothing there because that's actually unfinished terrain. Just to give you the idea, I'll actually demonstrate that now while I'm at it. Edit terrain. Null. That basically means it's not complete. Up, down, just changes the slopes. Press N for nullification, just like that. Or I can press backspace to delete. NG means no ground. There's no ground there. So I'm going to nullify that. Of course, I probably should have done that. So what's with the missing terrain then? Considering even here it's different. What's with the OOR plus minus 64? That's different. Well, it's a new adjustment I made to the terrain. If you look here on the terrain generator info for the slope, this is 128 vertical for every 1 block horizontal. Basically, it goes up 4 blocks for every 1 horizontal. It's really steep. But over here, well, it's a little different. Notice that it's different. This is supposed to be 71, 79, 87, 96, 106, 117, 128, and then it repeats. But guess what? You're probably thinking that it's pretty much doomed right now, right? Not exactly. Just what happens if I press down again? What do you know? It's actually drawing. And if I do the same on this side, what do you know? It's not there anymore. Yep, that's basically how the terrain editing works, and that's also why the terrain isn't there. Or at least part of it. So why is it blank then? That's because of an optimization I made. Why include the really high image slopes for like the 64, for example, if a terrain is not expected to even use anything that big? It's just one of the ways to optimize memory usage. You know, if you notice that 600 frames per second there. So that's basically what's going on with that. Nadara ice shelf isn't really any different from what it was. Be warned, that water's dangerous because it's icy cold. Bottomless pit aside. Yep, nothing really new here. You might also be noticing such a simple world's only getting 300 frames per second. That's because of that pulsing that I get. If I time it just right so I get a fast one, then it's going to report a really high frame rate. I have no idea what this pulsing is all about or what's causing it, but it's really annoying. I covered that in my previous video. Nadara Highlands doesn't really have anything much going on here. Of course, the snow does need to be updated. As you can see here, it does move. It needs to be updated so that it's much higher density. That's something to come later on. Other than that, there really ain't anything different. Although I am kind of considering reducing the visibility, and yes, that is a bottomless pit. Up above, you're not missing out on anything. Earth Space Base is yet another thing that haven't really done anything to because, well, there really isn't anything to adjust, aside from these things that affect every single world, like the platforms, just as an example. That was nice. Yep, there's the observatory in the background. Now remember all these buildings here, right? There's no buildings here, and I would like to add those in. So you at least get the basic idea for this. Yeah, I'm running ridiculously fast over the terrain here. Now you remember this here, right? Yep, that's covered in a previous video, or at least I might have. I just hit the slope. Yeah, so I guess I can show you those far ones over there. The various latitude and longitude indications where they're at. Here so you can see it really well. Yeah, you can hit odd slopes like that. Waiting for them to slow down. So, that aside, you kind of get the basic idea at least. This world is kind of a secret world, but of course you've already seen this and how it's glitched as well. Because, well, I need to pretty much overhaul it. So what you see here is pretty much the old content. But everything else is pretty much unchanged from before. Usual air taxis, and now everything is super dark. And when I mean super dark, I mean super, super dark. It's, well, I think you get the idea. Dark. Lots of pretty stars coming into the view. And that pretty much concludes this video.